Hey, what's going on, guys? In this one we're going to be making two 2-liter terrariums, just real basic closed setups today. Something that we all end up having. First things first, we're going to add a drainage layer. Got some leftover aquarium gravel as well as some terrarium substrate. So we're going to get that added. I'm going to use the worst funnel possible. You're going to see me try a few different things in this video. You can just ignore all those. None of them worked super well. We're going to get this added up. Biggest thing with these drainage layers is to make sure it's thick enough to drain all the water out of the substrate. That way that substrate isn't getting all moldy and putrid and nasty in there. Drainage layers basically allow everything to drain through that substrate and then recycle through without anything getting moldy or nasty. As far as substrate goes in this build, I typically like to use cocoa fiber as the base of the substrate. I don't currently have any, so I just grabbed a little bit of dirt outside. We're going to add just a little bit of orchid bark, minus the pieces that won't fit through the top of the bottle, as well as a little bit of sphagnum moss. That orchid bark and sphagnum moss is just going to give that dirt a little bit more space, make sure it doesn't get as compacted, give a little bit more room for everything to grow and to work in through that soil. Now, if you're not familiar with springtails, I typically add them a little bit later, but because of how these terrariums are going to be set up, it's just a lot easier to add them to the substrate now. But basically what these guys do is they're just going to be the cleanup crew. They're going to eat any mold or mildew, anything that starts to break down and grow in there. They're going to take all that, digest it, turn it back into nutrients, and keep everything nice and clean, keep that life cycle going. So as you can see with the substrate, we ended up using that same water bottle just to get that pushed down in there. Obviously this took a little bit of time, definitely a pain. This horizontal one was definitely worse, but you know, we used those long tweezers and we were able to get it in there, so it is what it is. Now we're going to give these a quick clean before we get those plants in there. Obviously this is a video, so we got to be able to see in the bottle so we can see what we're doing. I will say it's definitely hard to film these 2-liter bottles because no matter where you put the light, it's going to be shining back in the camera a little bit. So I apologize for the occasional view where you can't see too much. But in this vertical build, what we're going to put in here is a little fern. This is just a small one. I don't know exactly what it is. Just got it from the Reptile Expo for a couple bucks. When I started pulling it apart, it actually had these little nodes on the root system. I have no idea what that is, so if you have an idea what that is, let me know down in the comments. But this is going to be the main focal point in this. I'm hoping that these will start to grow, really multiply. I think it'll look pretty sweet if that entire top half of the bottle gets covered in these. Again, you can't see it super well from the front, so here's another little side view, as well as from the other side. You can see it just a tiny bit better. But I added just a couple little rocks as well as a few small branches just to give it a little bit more of a look in there. Now this horizontal one actually ended up turning out pretty good. Really wanted to look like a forest floor. So I took this pine cone, kind of started breaking it up because obviously that entire thing's not going to fit in there. Then I threw in a few old pine needles, and I actually ended up just taking some small rocks, making a little trail in there just to give it a little bit more of a focal point, so you felt like you were looking at just a little bit more. I did also steal just a little bit of moss as well as another little fern from my crested gecko tank. Hopefully those will start to grow. Threw that leaf in there as well. That's just going to start to break down, give it a little bit more of that natural fallen forest floor look too. So I really like how this one turned out. Closer look at both of them, you can see this horizontal one. I really feel like that did end up looking like a little bit more of a forest floor. You can see right here through the opening. But this vertical one turned out good as well. It's a little bit more of a simple setup, but I think once we give it some time, that fern will start to grow in there and that's going to look pretty freaking sweet. But as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this build, make sure to check out this one right here. That's going to be another closed terrarium build that I did. Got a little bit fancier of a bottle setup though. So make sure to check that one out.